Welcome, guys. Appreciate you working through the traffic and the change with the concert tonight. Um, First of all, welcome to Training Camp 2026. Hope you guys had a great summer. Couple things I thought be appropriate before we get started. I know we have a lot to cover. Number one, Alden Smith. Since we last talked, Alden passed, and anyone who saw Alden play the game knows that he was a special football player. This one hit especially hard because he was a valued member of our organization. But right prior to him passing, he had spoken to our rookies and really poured into those guys, and it was extremely impactful. And so our prayers, our thoughts go out to the Smith family as they continue to grieve with that. On a more positive note, with our organization, in a 10 days or so, Roger Craig will be going into the Hall of Fame, and we couldn't be more excited for Roger. Long overdue. Special football player who changed the way that the running back position was played, and I'm so thrilled for Roger and the Craig family. I know the faithful will show up in Canton. I'm going to have an opportunity to go out there, and we'll have a big contingent from our organization, and was on with a Zoom with the alumni, and I know how excited those guys, how much love they have for Roger, and the appreciation to the Hall and everyone for doing right by him and putting him in the Hall where he belongs. On to Kyle. So it was released today, via statement of what happened. And here's the great news. It looks like everyone's doing all right. The other driver seems to be doing all right. I don't want to speak to that because that's just secondhand knowledge. Kyle is doing good. He's got some bumps and bruises. He did suffer a concussion in the accident. Has some lingering effects from that concussion, and we're kind of treating this. We don't have a protocol for staff members when it comes to concussions, but we do with players, and it's become very helpful. So Kyle basically is going to be like in the protocol, and Doc Nino and all the great doctors we have are giving him great care, and we're going to let the condition, the doctors dictate how he comes back, when he comes back. He's been in the building, so we've seen him. It's kind of like we do with our players, a phased back approach. Number one for Kyle and the Shanahan family is getting him back right. He's a tremendous head coach, but this is bigger than that. This is about his well-being, and we're going to take the time necessary, and I think we're very equipped to do that. In his stead, Chris Furster is our assistant head coach. He will kind of assume those duties in conjunction, in concert with our staff. We're not going to blink. We feel like we're well equipped for something like this. We understand what a tremendous leader we have in Kyle. Like Chris Furster, been in the NFL for 34 seasons, 13 of those with Kyle. He knows Kyle inside and out, what Kyle wants, what Kyle needs. We've got guys like Clay Kubiak, Raheem Morris, obviously, who has head coach experience, Brad Boyer. The list goes on. And I think one of the great things Kyle does, aside from coaching his team, is leading this organization. And I think he's a tremendous developer of his staff. And so we're not going to miss a beat. We will keep you abreast of Kyle's progress as appropriate, as we deem appropriate. And you'll probably see Kyle out there on the field some when, kind of to what he can tolerate. But we're going to give the duties of actually running the team over to some other guys. And we have a really good plan, and excited for Kyle to get back, but only when he's ready. So that's that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Just a couple more things before we do open it up to questions. Brandon Ayuk, I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions. Brandon is on a left squad designation. As such, he's not on our 90-man roster. And, I'm personally, and we as an organization are going to focus on the players that are here. And so I don't have anything to say on that, anything to add to that. We wish him well. We wish his family well. To help you guys out with a couple transactions, I think you guys saw we had waived with a non-football injury Khalil Dinkins. We're bringing in Tanner McLaughlin, who was with Cincinnati last, in his spot. Evan Anderson was released today, or will be later today, and we'll let you know the corresponding transaction to fill that spot. For PUP, for the active PUP list, we'll have 4 players start there, George Kittle being one of them. George's rehab is coming tremendous. I know you guys have heard from him, and he's doing really well, and that's very exciting. He's doing everything possible to be ready for week 1, and we're thrilled with his progress. Isaac Garindo is going to start on the active PUP. He's doing very well. Mikel Williams doing extremely well. And what I would say with Mikel, he's making every effort to be ready for week 1. We'll see if that's a reality, and we'll let the markers and the medical staff kind of dictate that. Alfred Collins will start on PUP, but we anticipate him back in about the second window. Don't hold us to that timeline, but that's the plan right now. And if he keeps hitting the markers, that's about when Alfred will be back. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
John, so what is Kyle able to do as far as what's his involvement behind the scenes? And did you guys, or did he basically have, or did the coaches put together the camp schedule and kind of plan before they broke? Like, how does that all work?
So that's done long in advance. So a large part of the off season, especially as before we take off, those things, even the installs are put together. So yes, that is all, been taken care of. I think the best way to kind of explain what Kyle's been doing, just like our players, I think, concussion treatment has changed. We don't talk a lot about it because we're not supposed to talk about the protocol. Like I said, there's not a protocol for staff, but what they've learned that maybe is different from the past, like when I was playing, you had a concussion, they'd stick you in a dark room and say, hey, put a towel over your head and come out when you're feeling better. Now they know that it's much more proactive. So actually getting back to work is a positive thing. But he's not ready yet to be talking to you guys. He's not ready yet to be talking to our team. So those are kind of the duties that will be assumed. He may be out at practice. You guys will see him. You'll see some, he did break his nose, and so he's, the black eyes are getting better. He broke some ribs. That's painful, but that's not what's keeping him away. It's the concussion, and like I said, we'll continue to evaluate him, phase him back, and as he can tolerate things, we'll expand those, and that will clearly be dictated by the doctors and nothing else.
John, just what was your reaction? It's nothing you can be prepared for. I'm sure you're prepared for many other things. Was it Kyle who called you, or how did you find out, and just what went through your head initially?
I got the call from our director of security. And so obviously the first thing is everyone okay? Is Kyle okay? Then I learned there was another car involved. Are they okay? And the great news was, absent some bumps and bruises, it sounds like everyone, as far as I know. I don't want to speak for the other person because that's not appropriate, but it sounds like everyone's okay, and that's the great thing. And that was that. I was down in San Diego, and I thought, Kyle had last told me that they were coming down there. I think plans changed, so they were up here.
I know you can't know, and it'll be based on what you hear from the doctors, but is there a chance that Kyle does not go to Melbourne, and a chance he's not coaching this team to start the season?
Well, that's not what we're anticipating. That's not what I've heard from the doctors, but, just like we talk about with players, the timeline kind of takes care of itself. So he's got to meet certain markers, but I think the expectation is that long before that, he'll be better. But again, everybody responds to these things differently, and we're going to do whatever it takes to have him right when he comes back, and it's the right thing to do.
Hey, John, what have you seen from Nick Bosa and Fred Warner this offseason, and what does it mean to get those guys back?
Just tremendous. Those guys are diligent, hard workers, not only incredibly talented players, but they kind of tone setters for the way they work. That's inspiring to their teammates. I mean, Fred, I called Dustin Perry a lot during the offseason. How are the guys doing? And it's strictly voluntary. We can't mandate that they're here. a lot of them are here, and a lot of them are here, I think, because Fred Warner's here. And, Nick, kind of changed his routine. In the past, he'd go back to Florida. He stayed here this offseason for the most part. And I think he's feeling really good as a result. So it's wonderful when your best players are your best leaders. And I think we've got great examples of that in those two players. As for their injuries, Nick's doing tremendous. I think we'll see, Nick has always had, a different schedule. He's got a great sense, a great instinct for his body and what he needs. He'll probably start in a phased, individual first, and then we'll add as we see fit, as he sees fit. Fred, you can't hold that guy back, and he wants to be full throttle, and I think he will be. He's you guys know how close he came to being ready at the end of last season. I think all that hard work only made it better as he entered this offseason. So I would tell you, not speaking for Fred, but I guess I will speak for Fred because I've talked for Fred. With Fred a ton, he basically was a healthy player, just training this offseason, not obviously giving some care to the ankle, but that's in his mind behind him, and that's a testament to the type of worker he is.
John, obviously you weren't there, but as it was explained to you, can you just kind of lay out details on what happened with Kyle's accident, how it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave that to Kyle. I think that's more personal because everything's secondhand. I don't want to get in because other people were involved exactly what happened. There's a report out there, and I think I'll just stick to that.
I know you wanted to avoid Brandon Ayuk questions, but as a reporter, I'm obligated to ask you a couple. Is the intention to keep Ayuk on that reserve left squad list, A, and then B, you guys are playing the Commanders in Week 6. He's been adamant that he's going at some point to join the Commanders. Is this part of your calculus that you're not just going to release a guy so that he winds up on an opponent's roster?
Matt, I understand you got to do your job. I understand, but as I said at the start, he's on that list. That means he's not on our roster, and I'm going to focus on the guys that are and stand by what we've said already.
What went into the decision to name Chris Forster the interim head coach while Kyle's recovering?
Yeah, so I think what I talked about, Grant, he's been in the league for 34 seasons. We have a tremendous amount of respect. He's been around Kyle. He is our assistant head coach. I can tell you that, yes, in talking with Kyle, because we had these discussions, we see it, yes, Chris is the acting head coach, but it is going to be very much a collective effort. So, he's going to be out front. He will. I'll address our team first. I'll hand it over to Chris. We'll probably do, less team meetings because Kyle usually sits up here and talks football for 30 minutes. We're not going to try to replicate that. I believe, our culture kind of speaks for itself, and we believe what our culture is, the people. And Chris is one of those who we think very highly of. He's equipped to do this. Our staff is equipped, but it will very much be a collective effort.
Hey, John. There's been comments that George could be ready for Week 1. How much do you have to take into consideration you're flying to Australia, and that's a lot on his body while tempering those expectations?
All that will be taken into consideration, and with tremendous players usually comes a collective will that they're a little different, and they're going to want to push the envelope. They also, great athletes tend to heal at a different rate, and I had the occasion of seeing Dr. Elitrash, who did the surgery, and he went on and on about how fast George was healing. Now, I think we kind of take ourselves out of that. We let the doctors, we let the measures, such as is there a discrepancy from one side to the other? All those things kind of dictate the readiness. Everything is involved in that decision as very much like a trip. That's different, so we have to take everything into account. George knows that, our doctors know that, and we'll be very careful. But yet if he's ready, he's ready. And, I think that's what he's eager to show us, and, excited for that process. But he has been tremendous in the process, and it kind of speaks to who George is.
John, maybe without needing to get into too much detail, what's Kyle's mood been like when you've talked to him? Is he joking about it? Is he angry? Where's his head been at?
Yeah, I'd say I'd say, Kyle lives his family football, and so very eager to be there, but he knows he's not ready to be. So that's difficult for any competitor, and so some emotions that come with that. But he's been at work. Visit him over at his house, and he's handling it the way he should. But I think he goes through a process like we all do to get ready for a season, like players do, and. It's not ideal, but he understands that he's got to kind of let the symptoms, the doctors, he's understanding of that. But it's hard for him not to be in there as well. And so, we see players go through the similar thing, and it's no different when it's our head coach, and we'll support him through that. And I think it gives him great comfort to know that, like, we've got it. We got your back, Kyle, until you're ready.
And we've talked a lot about the veteran nature of this team, maybe even extra veteran nature of this team. I assume this is a time when it is especially valuable to have 35-year-olds, 32-year-olds, multiple Pro Bowlers who if there's any misstep in leadership, they're just going to be able to take over? Yes,
absolutely. I was with Fred the other day. We went over to local firehouse and did a little, we hung out with those guys, and Fred got back to Kyle right away and said, this message was, we got this, coach. Like the thing's we got this, trust us. And so absolutely, the Trent Williams, the Kyle Juszczyks, the Fred Warners, we're Christian McCaffrey's, we're Brock Purdy's. I mean, we've got tremendous leadership, and different circumstances. But I'm like I said, we're not blinking. Our job is to be at our best, and this team has had a focus all offseason that I've been very excited about. I know that we've improved our team, but what gives me a ton of confidence is our approach. And so prior to this, the approach, the readiness, the preparation to be at our best, we understand that, we play in a tremendous division that's going to be incredibly competitive. But I went back, and as I always do this off season, I read some John Wooden, and one of the early things was that everything he says is so poignant. It's like you read his book and you highlight everything. And one of them was, don't lose sleep worrying about your competition. Let them lose sleep worrying about you. Funny story. I was sharing that with Kyle right about when Myles Garrett joined the Rams. And he was going, man, that's really cool. And as we were speaking, that came out, and Kyle said, you know what, F John Wooden. That's we understand what we're going up against, but we're more focused on being at our best, and that we think is going to be pretty damn good.
John, I know how much he respects you, and talking about how competitive he is. Do you have to remind them like you would a player? Take your time before you come back.
Absolutely.
Into this?
Absolutely.
And have any of the plans changed between Australia? I know that's more than a month away, but because of whatever injuries he's trying to recover from, have the scheduling plans changed in terms of how early you wanted the team to be out there before the game?
No, we put a ton of work into, this kind of uncharted territory going down to Australia for a team in the NFL. I mean, we've worn this thing out to try to get the best possible situation. Talked to rugby teams. Rugby teams travel internationally a lot. We've talked to sleep specialists. We've talked to everyone. We know we have a really good plan. They don't change. We'll be ready in Australia. We understand we're facing a really great team in the Rams, and we got to put the work in to be ready for that, but to be ready for the season as a whole, and really excited about that process.
John, Seattle won last year, obviously, and they were really good in explosives, and it seems like your guys off season, that might have been one of your guys' themes, get more explosive. There's a lot more explosive receivers, running backs. Was that a thought process? Hey, let's try to be better in that area.
Yeah, we've always been an explosive team, and probably fell off there a little. And so in your personnel, you go attack that. Mike Evans has been a tremendously explosive player. But I think the bigger approach, Larry, has been collectively, because explosives come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. They come in the run game, and we fell off there. The explosives weren't there as much, and so that's all 11 on the field. That's your entire team, and that's what you emphasize, and I think we spent a lot of time emphasizing that. We did address our personnel. I love what we were able to get accomplished this offseason, and now we got to go to work, and you got to earn everything in this league, and explosives are no different, and they are an important part of football, limiting them on defense and going out there and being an incredibly explosive team on offense and on special teams. And you know, we always focus on that, but there's been a heightened focus on that.
John, I got two questions. One about Kyle. How did you guys spread the word to the team, and was it addressed in a meeting early this morning as well, but in, like, I guess the past 11 days leading to
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we kind of wanted the Shanahan family and Kyle and Mandy to kind of do that on their own pace. I do know that Mandy reached out to some of the captains and some of the players we've known for a long time shortly thereafter, I think over last weekend. And so I think it starts to trickle out. But really, we haven't, you know, some guys have been working out, but, you know, the only time the NFL really shuts down is right before training camp for that month. And so people haven't been around. So this meeting we'll have at 1 o'clock will really be the first time we've addressed it as a team collectively. Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned back at the league meetings, in terms of the player health, you've obviously done a lot of studies on the injuries. You said that you might alter some things for training camp.
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, I won't
out?
get into the details. I'll let Kyle, when he's back and healthy, you know, if he chooses to. But I think you guys will see some different things. Just we kind of audited everything, not because we always do that. I do know, you know, I talked about it at the league meetings. I think $9 million went into our hydro area back there. It's beautiful. I went in there. We got like the whole team in there right now, and they're loving it. And so, you know, credit to the Yorks, a thank you to the Yorks for always giving us every resource that we need. We've added personnel to our health and performance staff, but we take a hard look at everything. And there's a lot of different dynamics this year with going to Australia later in the year, with going to Mexico City, with the season, you know, but we took a hard look at training camp. And there will be some adjustments that, you know, some of them minor, but everything counts. And so you try to do your absolute best to give ourselves the best chance to stay healthy. The reality is this league, people get hurt, but you know, I'm real proud of the changes that we have made, and we'll keep doing the things we've done well, and we'll see where it ends up.
Sean, if you can kind of talk about the intended or the expected impact of the shift. Obviously, you guys are a well-oiled machine, but is Chris Forrester kind of taking over? Does that pull him away from the offensive line at all, or what is the way this works?
I don't think that will be the case. You know, like I said, we may not have as many team meetings as we typically do because Kyle sits right there in this room and just talks football. Now, you know, should we? That's different from a lot of places I've been where the head coach gets up, looks at the schedule for the day, and says break up. So we may be a little more, let's break up, not trying to replicate something so that Chris can coach his guys. But what I do know is Raheem Morris has been a head coach on a couple of occasions. He'll have the defense handled along with his staff, and Clay Kubiak and Chris and all those guys will have our offense. Brant will take care of the special teams. And when we need to come together, we'll come together. So, you know, that's what I mean by a well-oiled machine. And we'll, you know, when appropriate, we'll come together as a team. But a lot of it will just be, all right, we'll miss that. But when Kyle's back, we'll get back to that. And you know, I think we're going to be fine.
Hi, John.
Hi.
This is year 10 for you. So what are you most looking forward to seeing unfold at camp this year?
I just know you never climb a mountain the same way. Every journey's different. And I love that about this league. And the reality is the teams change so much every year. We're fortunate here. We've got a solid core of guys that have been here for a while. So we have tremendous continuity. I love a lot of the additions we've made because of the talent of the players, but more so for who they are as people and their approach. And so, you know, that's what every year comes challenges. We're talking about one right now with a tremendous head coach, a guy I think is, if not the best, right up there. So that's a challenge in of itself, but there is always challenges in this league. And, you know, I find the best players, the best teams find a way to work through that. So every journey's different, and I look forward to that. How are you going to go earn whatever you whatever you want to earn. And I know the collective will of this group is going to be special, and I'm looking forward to that to unfold.
So you said Kyle's been in the building since the accident and may be on the practice field here and there. Is it important as he recovers to just show face and be around the guys, even if not in that official?
Well, his health's most important, and so he's already seen some of the players. They stop in. But I think what's most important is his health. And so, again, that will be dictated, by, all right, try to do a little more today until you have symptoms or whatever. And that's kind of how we do it with players, and that's the approach we're taking with Kyle. And that's not me. That's Kyle, that's Doc Nino, and all the different specialists that we have, kind of assessing and monitoring that. And it's a fluid plan that will change, and hopefully in short time, he's feeling better and he's back. But we're going to give it whatever time is necessary.
John, regarding Chris Forster, does the assistant head coach title come with any defined responsibilities, or was it more just a reflection of Kyle's respect for him? And then secondly, was it an indication that if something were to happen to Kyle during a game, that you had a protocol set up for who takes over?
Yeah, I mean, there's always thought. Kyle always talks about, there's no absolutes. So just because Chris was the assistant head coach doesn't mean that's who is going to assume the responsibilities. And as I've said, the way Kyle's thinking about it and has communicated to me that he wants to see things done is that it's a collective effort. But somebody does have to be out front. And, but I know like Chris is kind of a grouchy guy. He doesn't really believe in like breakdowns and all that. So Raheem may do the breakdowns. Fred may do the breakdowns. I think a lot of that will take care of itself. But I think it's probably a reflection, like I said, the 34 NFL seasons, his acumen. He's respected throughout our building, and he's kind of earned that. So, we're rolling with that. But everyone will be a part of it.
John, just one more about how Kyle will be replaced here for the time being. Clay called plays last year during the preseason. Is that going to be what happens on the practice field this year? And did Kyle assigning that to Clay, does that better prepare you for?
Yeah, I think what I'd say, Dave, in training camp, I think Clay typically is doing that. Kyle will have suggestions, but Clay usually does the script along with the staff. So nothing different there. But you're right. In past preseasons, there's been times where he said, Clay, call it. A lot of coaches in this league do things a year out. Kyle kind of does it by feel. And so I don't know what his plan was, but probably Clay was going to call the preseason. And, Clay's certainly capable. Clay's an excellent football coach, and we're fortunate to have him.
John, one more unwanted question about Brandon. I know you, a couple weeks ago, he had mentioned you specifically had gone to visit him. And he made it sound like it was unwanted. Can you just clarify if that indeed that happened and what your intent or goal was in that situation?
Yeah. Again, I just, if I'm not going to answer one, I don't want to. But I can tell you that at the forefront of our thoughts with any player is their well-being, and so I'll just leave it at that. But we wish him and we wish his family well.
Obviously, the defensive line is a big deal for you guys in the NFL. 20 sacks last year. I know Bosa coming back is a big deal as it relates to that. What level of confidence do you have that kind of you have what you need there now? I mean, having the draft and Osa and all that.
Yeah, good question, Eric, because I think when we've been successful here, our offensive linemen, our defensive line has wreaked havoc. And I think that's pretty consistent around the league. We weren't good enough last year, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but ultimately all those reasons are just excuses. So you have to address it. I feel confident with the way that we addressed it. Yes, Nick being back is a difference maker, but it was bigger than that. And so we'll do some things schematically without changing. Raheem's background comes from Monty Kiffin, so very similar to what Saleh has done for us and who we've been. But there will be some expanded things, some more versatility. But we've kind of turned over this defensive line over the last couple of years with players like Alfred Collins and C.J. West, and this year Grayson Halton, Romello Height, Keon White, who came in last year. I'm really excited to see that group together and see what they can do, because that certainly is a priority. When we've been at our best, we've made the life miserable on the opposing offense from the defensive front. They everything starts there. I knew that as a player. I was a better player when I played with Warren Sapp than when I went to Denver and didn't have that, So I get that, believe me, and we've made a concerted effort to improve that. Now we got to go show that we have. All right. Thank you, guys.